A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I feel like I have to put some extra emphasis on that today. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. It is great to have you with us on the program. You know, we had that 6-hour forum on gun control in Las Vegas yesterday. 9 of the top 10 Democratic presidential candidates on stage. Bernie Sanders not on stage because of his medical emergency, but it was something. It was a lot of talk about gun control. And again, you know, the press is trying to, I think, emphasize the minor areas of disagreement between these candidates, talking about, you know, Beto going after Pete Buttigieg. None of that matters. None of that matters. What you saw on stage yesterday in Las Vegas was the most anti-gun crop of presidential contenders in this country's history. I mean, let's just go through a couple of the headlines. Beto O'Rourke yesterday suggesting that the Second Amendment is outdated, talking about this meme that he saw where, you know, back in the 1700s when the Second Amendment was ratified, you know, it took 3 minutes to reload a musket, which I really didn't. It was a little bit faster than that. But the idea being that, you know, we've outgrown the Second Amendment. In which case, again, my advice to Beto O'Rourke is come out in full repeal of the Second Amendment. Make that your campaign platform. Quit trying to say that all of these unconstitutional proposals are in fact constitutional and just say it doesn't matter if they're unconstitutional because we're going to change the Constitution. I wouldn't agree with Beto, but I would find it a much more honest approach than what Beto has done so far. Then you had Joe Biden, who made the claim that more people are dying from guns than anything else happening in this country, which is not true at all. All gun-related deaths, including homicides, suicides, accidents involving firearms, comprise less than 3% of all deaths in the United States. Number one killer of Americans, heart disease. Number two, cancer. Between those two diseases, 60% of deaths can be attributed to one of those two factors. Homicides, suicides, accidents, way down at the bottom of the list. But again, Joe Biden in this, I got to tell you, this was a rambling answer too, because not only does he starts out saying, well, you know, guns are killing more than anything else happening out there. He then went and did almost a complete 180 and said, but you know, I tell my grandkids to play the odds. And that, you know, the odds of them becoming the victim of a violent crime, really, really small. So don't get freaked out. Almost like, you know, he said at one point that we're scaring the hell out of our children. And then I think he caught himself, because you're not supposed to say that. And he said, and understandably so. But then he went back a couple of minutes later and said, yeah, but you know, the odds are that you're going to be fine. And he's right. He's right. These are incredibly rare events, these active assailant attacks. And Joe Biden is also correct when he says that the odds are you will never be the victim of a violent crime. But gun control advocates don't want to hear that. Democratic presidential candidates don't want to hear that. They want to scare the bejeebers out of the American public so that they will better support bans on the most, you know, commonly sold firearms in America today. And then there was Andrew Yang, who I haven't talked a lot about on this program. Every time I mention Andrew Yang on social media, the Yang gang comes out and, oh, I love Andrew Yang. I think Andrew Yang is an intriguing guy. I would not vote for him. He's kind of a one-trick pony. He's got his, you know, $1,000 a month free money plan, right? His universal basic income. And that's kind of it. You know, when it comes to his quote-unquote assault ban, he wants to fine people $1 million if you're caught with a quote-unquote assault weapon after he's banned it. And he even brought his $1,000 a month free money plan to this gun control forum yesterday. My colleague Tom Knighton at Bearing Arms talking about Yang, saying that his, you know, free $1,000 a month is somehow going to, reduce the influence of the gun lobby, because that money that you get from the government, you can then turn around and donate to gun control groups or whatever. I mean, he's got a lot of plans for these $1,000 checks that he wants to give people. Again, what I heard yesterday from the candidates on stage, and I had a chance to watch. I didn't watch all 6 hours, I will be honest with you, but I watched a majority of these 6 hours. And what I saw was that the candidates there on stage were far more interested, it seemed, in going after law-abiding gun owners, Republicans, President Trump. Then they were the gun lobby, the gun industry. Then they were interested in actually designing or proposing policies that were aimed at the less than 1% of the population that's actually responsible for majority of violent crime in this country. Be it gang members, be it domestic abusers, be it these active assailants. The focus was on the legal gun owners. The focus was on the culture of responsible gun ownership. The focus were on politicians who support the constitutionally protected right to keep and bear arms rather than the perpetrators of violent crime. They were an absolute afterthought for every one of those candidates in Las Vegas yesterday. Now, I had the opportunity to speak earlier today with Dave Kopel, research director at the Independence Institute. I was checking to see if we had seen any word from the Supreme Court on the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association case. We did not. So Monday, looks like that would be the next day that the Supreme Court could let us know whether or not this case is going to proceed to oral arguments on December 2nd, or whether it's going to be ruled moot by the Supreme Court and then it would go away. It's a really important Second Amendment case, as is evidenced by the attempts by gun control advocates to get the Supreme Court to moot this decision. And as Dave said, it is part and parcel of a plan by gun control advocates to not just pass gun control laws, but really to develop an anti-gun culture here in the United States.
England is a good model because you put in a licensing system in 1921, and then, maybe for the next 15 years or so, licensing systems run in a pretty moderate and fair way. And, the only people who get denied are, communist revolutionaries or known criminals and things like that. But then gradually you turn it up and up and up. So now it's a tremendous hassle in the UK to get a gun permit. And just like the doctor from Johns Hopkins said, that discourages a lot of people from becoming gun owners, even though they would never be criminals, ever. But you've now reduced the sociological base of people who will stand up and fight for the right to keep and bear arms. And you do that over a generational process. Mm-hmm. And then you can gradually turn something which was as 1900 in England, a constitutional right in the English Declaration of Right, into a sporting privilege that is only allowed to be exercised by a tiny fraction of the population.
Well, okay.
And there's not enough of them to resist every successive constriction of them into eventual extinction.
And I mean, I think you can even see that domestically in states like California, in places like Illinois. I was talking with Laura Ingraham last night, and she pointed out she was recently in Chicago, and she was talking to people who were old enough to remember life in Chicago before their handgun ban, when, even life in Chicago before the, some of the restrictions of the 1970s, where, you had high school rifle teams. You had a culture of lawful gun ownership that has since been obliterated. And now you've got people who, maybe 2 or 3 generations removed from that culture of lawful gun ownership existing in a place like Chicago. And it is a lot easier in the city of Chicago now, at least at the local level, to ram through whatever gun control proposal you would want.
That's right. The objective is to destroy the lawful culture. The Bloomberg ideal and the rest of the hate groups is so that the only people that a normal citizen ever knows who own guns are police and criminals. And so though that normal citizen is not going to be at all resistant to destruction of the lawful gun owners, who hopefully under the Bloomberg system, a normal citizen would never even run into or be friends with.
All right, a couple more questions for you, and then we'll let you go. But, we talked about that gun ban and quote-unquote buyback. And, of course, England had their handgun ban and their semi-auto ban, and, Mr. and Mrs. United Kingdom turned them all in. Australia, New Zealand. Have we ever in the United States had a federal ban on an object where the government came and said, listen, I know that you have legally owned this, but now you have to turn it over? I mean, even during Prohibition, you were allowed to keep the alcohol in your possession when Prohibition went into effect. So have we ever seen anything like what Beto and, Booker and some of these other candidates are calling for?
Not that I can recall, although Trump's bump stock ban goes even further. We're saying that, you had this product which we had specific rulings that said it's okay and it's not a machine gun conversion kit, and now we change our mind and it's just contraband for you to possess, and we're not even so. You can turn it into us or you can destroy it. Then if you don't do one of those two things, then you're a federal felon.
Okay, yeah, that would certainly suffice. All right, last question for you, Dave, and I realize you don't have any psychic insight into the minds of Supreme Court justices, but if you had to take a guess, do you think that we'll learn next week whether or not New York State Rifle and Pistol Association is going to proceed to oral arguments in December?
That is, yes, that's my guess, that they'll probably process that. And the Supreme Court, one of the things that all 9 of them care about, to their credit, is the institutional well-being of the Supreme Court. And my hope is that the threat letter they got from some of the Democratic senators and New York City's obvious, contempt in some ways for the Supreme Court may make them decide to the justices unanimously decide to stand up and defend the prerogatives of and rights of the judicial branch.
And we won't really know if it's a unanimous decision, right? Because the stuff that happens in conference, we'll get the orders, but will we know all 9 justices or 5 justices or 7 justices said yes, let's proceed to oral arguments on December 2nd, or will we just know that the court has decided that that's what they want to do?
You would just know that the court has decided, although it's theoretically possible for somebody, a justice who disagreed, to write a dissent from whatever the majority decides. But that would be a very unusual situation for an order like this.
All right. Dave Kopel, Research Director at the Independence Institute in Colorado. Thank you, as always, sir. It's great talking with you today. All right, let's get to today's armed citizen story, our good deed of the day. I've had a couple of folks who have written in with some suggestions, by the way, for the name of our criminal who constantly gets away segment. Let's see if we can. Here we go. This is from Michael, who suggested DOJ fails, justice fails. The recidivist report, I like that one. That's got some great alliteration there, Michael. Law dodgers, I like that one too. And just one more, he says, because they always seem to get one more chance to commit the same crimes. I like that. Michael, these are some very strong suggestions. If you have suggestions of your own, cam.edwards@bearingarms.com. Whatever one we pick, I might open this up for the rest of the week here, but whatever one we go with, I think we're going to give you a free bottle of homemade hot sauce from my wife, Missy. All right, let's get to today's, we'll call it the recidivist report for today. How about that, Michael? Because I really do like that one. This from Alton, Illinois, the Alton Telegraph. Suspect in robbery near fatal shooting of store clerk left his cell phone at the scene in Collinsville, Illinois, according to prosecutors. So Patrick Wilson is this guy's name. He is currently on trial right now for this robbery and shooting. This occurred back in 2017. Where he's alleged to have shot a gas station clerk in the artery, or in a femoral artery, nearly caused him to bleed to death. Basically, as soon as he entered the door of this store, it didn't even, ask for anything at that point. Right now, he's charged with attempted first-degree murder, armed robbery with a firearm, aggravated battery with a firearm, and unlawful possession of a firearm by a felon. Yeah, he's got a 2009 conviction for robbery in Illinois, for which he was sentenced to, you ready for this? 4 years probation. That's right. You can rob somebody and you get away with 4 years probation in Illinois. But in Illinois, there are politicians that say if you want to own an AR-15, that should put you in prison. Just simply owning that same firearm. Trial continues. He could be facing life in prison for the current charges, but based on his past criminal history, I'm guessing even if he's convicted, he's not going to be doing life in prison. Although it is at trial now, so that reduces, probably not going to see a last-minute plea bargain. And once these cases go to trial and a jury has a chance to convict somebody and get involved in the sentencing, then maybe we'll actually see some real punishment as opposed to the slap on the wrist that Mr. Wilson has previously received. All right, on to our armed citizen story of the day. from North Carolina, Statesville, North Carolina. That gentleman right there, Brandon Taylor Knight, who is arrested after a homeowner ended up holding him at gunpoint inside his own home. Yeah, deputies called out to a home in Iredell County. This was in Statesville on on Monday of this week. Officials say that homeowner got back to his house, found the back door had been pried open, and then he found 26-year-old Brandon Taylor Knight in a bedroom, allegedly stealing jewelry. Homeowner held Knight at gunpoint until deputies arrived, able to take him into custody. Sheriff Darren Campbell said it's lucky for the suspect that the investigation did not end in a dramatically different way. During this investigation, deputies found that 2 other nearby homes had also been broken into. They say Knight had stolen property on him. He was arrested, charged with 2 felony counts of breaking and entering, as well as 2 counts of felony larceny. After breaking and entering, more charges, according to investigators, are expected. Right now, he is being held on a $30,000 secured bond. All right, our good deed of the day, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Adam Gates is the good Samaritan who just seems to be finding himself in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing, because not once, but twice so far this year, Adam has been able to stop a crime in progress. Lives in Albuquerque. He said he was at a Circle K there in Albuquerque, and he noticed these 2 guys checking out the place, scoping it out. He said you didn't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out these guys were up to no good. He said they got out of the car, they left the doors unlatched, they ran into the store. And that's when Adam Gates pulled out his firearm, ordered the men onto the ground when they ran out with several cases of beer. Gates says, a lot of people say, see something, say something. I'm more of a see something, do something kind of guy. We live in a dangerous city. Now, one of the suspected thieves got away, but police arrived, arrested the driver, Angelo Garcia, who apparently had his 14-year-old son in the car with him during this attempted robbery. Adam Gates says it's disappointing because that's the new generation, right? And that's what he's teaching them. That is not okay. It is not okay. And as I mentioned, this is not the first time that Adam Gates has stopped a crime. Not the first time this year. First time this year. But last year, 2018, he pulled a guy named Malcolm Torres out of a car after he was driving drunk. Torres ended up getting a slap on the wrist. And that wasn't the last time that Torres has actually been in trouble, according to Adam Gates. Torres questioned the disappearance and death of his stepdaughter, 5-year-old Renesmee Calzada, who was found in the Rio Grande River last month. Adam Gates says that was crushing. KRQE reports that this individual, Torres, has not been charged in that death. Adam Gates, though, says he is fed up with crime, wants more people held accountable. He said Thursday night was a beer run. Next thing for this guy, is it a carjacking? Is it a mugging? Is he going to kill somebody? He says it has to stop. Well, it's not anytime soon, as KRQE reports. Individual that was pulled out of that car, the driver of that car, Angelo Garcia, had his 14-year-old son with him. Garcia was released on his own recognizance there. Well, in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. Adam Gates there in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We thank you for your good deed of the day. That is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. Thank you again for being a part of the program. Thanks again as well to those of you who stayed up late to watch Laura Ingraham on Fox last night. I had a great time talking with Laura about that Democratic gun violence town hall or gun control forum. I think that's probably more appropriate, the gun control forum. But I appreciate you tuning in and watching that. You can get this show, Bearing Arms Cam and Company, as a podcast at Apple Podcast, at Spotify, Stitcher, townhall.com podcast. You can subscribe as well to Town Hall Media at YouTube, and make sure you don't miss a show. We will see you back here tomorrow with the latest Second Amendment news and information from all across the nation. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in.